The Minnesota Vikings and the 2022 NFL Draft is finally here. And this is everything you need to know, an entire guide to the 2022 NFL Draft for the Minnesota Vikings. In this guide, we're not going to be totally talking about players and breaking down a bunch of prospects because, all in all, to be honest, I trust Kwesi and our Vikings organization's opinions on the players more than I do. But I will give my 2 cents on what I believe the Vikings should target, how they should go about this, really what our draft picks are going to be, and what needs we do need to fill. Now, when it comes to needs, we are going to look at our seven biggest needs. However, I would take value of the player over the value of the position. However, with that being said, we have to fill some of these needs to be a starting role, our day one starters, if we do want to make a Super Bowl this next season. Our seven biggest needs for the Minnesota Vikings. Number one, obviously, being cornerback. Feels like every year we're talking about cornerback being the biggest need, but once again, we are here with corner being the biggest need. Outside of that, we do need more edge rushers on this team. That is our second biggest need, in my opinion. Obviously, bringing in Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter still being here, we do have one of the best pass rushing duos, but let's be honest, they suffer with injuries all the time. They can't played a combined, 6 games this last year. Outside of that, we don't have a whole lot of edge rushers on top of that. I mean, Harrison Phillips coming in here will play defensive end for us. We don't know how he's going to look. We have Jalen Taiwan is also starting at defensive end according to ESPN's depth chart for us. So we have a lot of needs when it comes to edge rusher, and that would be our second biggest need. Interior offensive line is another massive need for the Minnesota Vikings. This is a position that we could I am sick right now. This is a position that we could fill in the middle rounds of the draft. I wouldn't expect the Vikings to take an interior offensive lineman in the first round, although we do have a massive need at center. We aren't picking up Garrett Bradbury's fifth-year option, so we will need a new center going forward. We did just lose Mason Cole also in free agency. To the Pittsburgh Steelers. Outside of that, at the right guard position, we don't have any idea who's going to be our starting right guard next year. I'm hoping it's Wyatt Davis, but again, we have to see more from Wyatt Davis and everybody else competing for the position. So maybe the Vikings do fill the right guard need in the second, third round, who can step up day one at the position. So those are really our three biggest needs right there: corner, edge, and interior offensive line. The rest of them are mostly just looking for backups here. That's going to be safety. After losing Xavier Woods to free agency, we now have a massive hole at the safety position. Harrison Smith is also an aging veteran. He's the oldest player on our entire team. I believe Harrison Smith is the oldest player in our team, if I have that right. He's an aging veteran. Outside of that, Cam Bynum, he had an outstanding, phenomenal, standout rookie season. But again, he was a fourth-round draft pick. He's a converted safety. We have no idea how he's going to look as a starter. So we could see a safety drafted even in the first round. Vikings could honestly go for a safety in the first round, as we could see Notre Dame safety fall to us at the 12th pick. Outside of that, we could fill the need in the middle rounds. I'm not a big fan of taking a safety in the first round. However, like I said, this Kyle Hamilton is outstanding, and him being available at 12, more likely than not, it's going to happen, in my opinion. I said this many times on the show for months now, and yet people still disagree with me that Kyle Hamilton is going to be a top 5 pick. People are saying, I don't know where that came from, why NFL fans are out of their mind. They believe that's really going to happen. Now, him being available at 12, I understand that might not happen. However, we've seen the best safeties of all time fall. Could be available to us at 12. Can plug him in as a day one starter, or else you can target a safety in the middle rounds. You don't need to take a safety in the first round. Outside of that, tight end is another big need for the Vikings. Obviously, Irv Smith Jr. expected to be an amazing tight end for us. Outside of that, we're pretty thin at the position, as Irv Smith Jr. has suffered with injuries every year thus far, and now going into his third year in the league, I believe it is. Third year in the league, we have yet to really see starting caliber tight end from him, as he has been injured every season thus far. So we're looking for a new tight end. Maybe we can find someone in the middle rounds of this draft for the Minnesota Vikings. Irv Smith Jr., I'm expecting him to be our starter next year, and I'm hoping he can actually stay healthy. Outside of that, we're very thin at the position. I believe our second person is Johnny. This Johnny, the guy we signed from the Rams, who I've never heard of. So definitely need to bring in a new tight end on top of that. Linebacker is another big need for the Vikings. Obviously, we don't need a linebacker who's going to be a day one starter for us. With that being said, we are very thin at the linebacker position. Outside of obviously Eric Hendricks being one of the best off-ball linebackers, arguably the best in the league. And then outside of that, I mean, we got Jordan Hicks, who we brought in from the Cardinals. We don't really have any interior off-ball linebackers outside of those two. Troy Dye, we have to obviously see more of him. Chaz Surratt, we have to see more from him. Just continue to swing at linebackers. You can swing in them in the day 3 of the draft around the 4th round and later is where I expect the Vikings to target a linebacker if they can. And then for number 7, wide receiver, another big need for the Vikings. And I've talked about it for some time now. Yes, we have one of the best receiving cores. However, you have to continue to swing on wide receivers in the late rounds as going into this next season, outside of obviously Jefferson, nobody's a lock. Let's be honest. Adam Thielen is an aging veteran. The guy's getting old. We might see the final season of him in Minnesota Vikings uniform. KJ Osborne had an amazing last year, obviously. But outside of that, KJ Osborne, we don't know if he's going to go into this next season and be the Osborne he was this last year. Olabisi Johnson, I believe he's going into his final year on top of that. And then outside of that, what, Amir Smith-Marset? I guess, but we need more wide receivers to bring on top of that to bring more depth at the position, be the next man up if possible, because after the season, we are going to be looking to extending Justin Jefferson. That involves making him a top 3 paid receiver because he deserves it. And then you just need a supporting cast around him on top of that. But to fill these needs, the Minnesota Vikings have a lot of draft picks, quite a bit. I believe they have 8 draft picks, if I have that right. 3, 4, 6, yeah, 8 draft picks. The Vikings have 8 draft picks in this draft, including the 12th overall draft pick, which gives us a lot of options at the 12th overall pick. I've talked about it many times. The biggest targets I'd like the Vikings to bring in at the 12th pick, or else you have the option of trading down as well. This will be Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's first ever draft pick as an NFL GM. So there's one thing I know about watching football. That first draft pick says a lot about who you are and how your plans are going forward for the team. Got to hit on your first draft pick, which is why if Kyle Hamilton is available, I believe he will take him because pretty much a lock that he's going to work in the league, if you ask me. But at the 12th overall pick, the Vikings have that pick in the first round. That is the first day of the draft this Thursday, April 28th in Las Vegas. We will be doing a live stream for the first day of the draft where the Vikings will be picking at 12. And really, so many options the Vikings have at this pick. I'm hoping we can get a quarter with like Sauce Gardner or Stingley at this pick. Not sure if that's going to happen because of how sought after of a position that it really is. Likely not going to get either one of those guys in my personal opinion. However, still, everything's open. It's the draft. You have no idea what's going to happen in the draft. There are so many cards and dominoes that will fall in this draft. You have no clue what's going to happen, and I'm hoping the Vikings can please hit on a first-round draft pick because outside of Justin Jefferson, we haven't hit on very many first-round draft picks of the last decade. And then in the day 2 of the draft, we have our second round and third round pick being the 46th overall pick and the 77th overall pick, which we can fill some needs in starting positions as well, if possible, if we can hit on those positions. I know in the second and third round, there is a lot of offensive linemen that are starting caliber players like Daniel Faalele from Minnesota. You have multiple players who can be starting caliber at those rounds. You can also bring in a starting safety if possible in those rounds. And then in day 3 of the draft, day 3 will be held on Saturday, April 30th. These are rounds 4 through 7. The Vikings don't have a 4th round draft pick, which is totally fine because we have 4 draft picks in day 3 of the draft, including the 156th overall pick from the Baltimore Ravens in the 5th round, being our only 5th round pick this year, and then 3 picks in the 6th round, being the 184th, 191st, and 192nd. Back-to-back picks right there. One from the New York Jets, I believe that's involved in the trade with the New York Jets when we got their tight end this last year and didn't have any use for their tight end. So kind of a wasted trade right there, if you ask me. But we do have the New York Jets pick in the 6th round. We have the Ravens pick in the 6th round. I believe the Ravens did get that from someone else, if I have that right as well. So kind of traded around the place, and then our own. And into the 7th round, final round of the draft, we have the 250th pick from the San Francisco 49ers. So that wraps up our 8 draft picks the Minnesota Vikings have in this draft going forward. And it really comes down to that first pick because this is Kwesi's first overall pick as a GM. And he has so many options. And we're going to be doing a live stream because honestly, we have no clue what to expect. And Kwesi has mentioned so far that he does value over position, pretty much, meaning he's going to take whoever the best player available is. And I'm so happy to see that he's not reaching on players because like we saw from previous GMs, not going to throw any names out there, but pretty much pick up every Vikings GM from the past. Like we've seen from previous GMs, they don't care how good you are. They just want to take you off based off of your position, which is why we've had many quarterbacks and corners who have not worked with us on this Vikings team. So it's good to know that we have a GM who doesn't care what position you play. They just want to bring you in if you're the best player available, or trading down if you don't necessarily need the position. Like if a quarterback's the best player available, you're stuck with Kirk for the next 2-3 years because he's on a fully guaranteed no trade clause contract. So no point in taking a quarterback in this draft class at all. I would love to have a quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I would love to take a quarterback, but we're stuck with Kirk for 2-3 years. At least for the next 2 or 3 years, as he is on a fully guaranteed no trade clause contract. But outside of that, the Vikings' biggest needs, I'm really hoping we can get a corner in the first round. If we don't find a player like Stingley or Sauce at 12, we could trade down for someone like McDuffie or Andrew Booth into the first round. If not, I'm fine with us sitting at 12 and finding a player who can be in one of these other needs that we have for the Vikings. Maybe we do find Jermaine Johnson with the 12th pick. Maybe we do find Kyle Hamilton with the 12th pick is another option. I do believe more likely than not, like I said, he will be available there. But I'd also be fine with the Vikings taking a wide receiver in the first round, which is why we're going to be live streaming on the Morning Kickoff YouTube channel this Thursday for the first day of the draft. Draft week is finally here. We are back. I'm still a little sick from last week. We weren't live last week, but it's totally fine because there wasn't much to talk about anyways. I could talk about Deebo Samuel being traded for 5 hours like every other channel, every other podcast, but I didn't do that. I decided to take the week off, but we're here. We are back for the NFL draft week this week.